Hospital Porter's pride and dignity stop the New World Order. Welcome to HPANWO TV. Welcome to this, my review of the second episode of the second season of Project Blue Book. Yeah, I think I may be catching up a bit now, because I think most of the people I've seen to, they're already working their way through them. They're already on episode 7 or something. They've watched them all. I don't know if you're following Richard Dolan. You'll know that he himself has done reviews, or not reviews, but he's looked into the true stories behind, the true cases behind many of the stories of the episodes. And so, of course, and I'm familiar with most of these, I must say. And this, of course, is the second, excuse me, the second episode. Now, as you know, if you watched my review of the first episode, the link is in the description box, that this is a part 2. It's not just part 2 of the series, it's a part 2 of a 2-part episode. And if you remember how it was last night, you know that, last time. It's set, this is 1952, it's 6 years after the Roswell incident, and all hell is breaking loose in Roswell again, with strange craft appearing and weird messages being left around. And, it ended, of course, the last episode, with what looked like a UFO crash in the middle of a city. In the middle of Roswell, which is kind of a city. It's called the city of Roswell. It's actually not a very big place, but it's still called a city. And of course, that's what follows. Then is part 2 of that. Now, it's a very complicated episode. Actually, there's lots of twists and double twists in the plot. It's very clever how it's been weaved together by the storytellers, I must say. But it's kind of like, if you get your head around it, you may need to watch it more than once. In fact, I had to go back and rewind a couple of bits to get what was actually going on. But it's incredibly clever. I mean, so far on the second episode, this series is living up to the standards of the first season, I must say. It really, really is. So, as I said, this is going to contain spoilers, as I explained in the titles. So, if you haven't watched this, you may want to go away and watch it before I say anything, because I am going to review this with spoilers. And of course, the first spoiler, of course, is that the disc that comes down in the middle of Roswell it's Duncan Booker's disc, the one he built, the fake UFO, the flying saucer that he constructed as a model of the one he saw. Now, what's interesting from this part is it ties in very much with things I've said before about crash retrievals in populated areas. Crash retrievals with many witnesses. And I talk about this in detail in my Nottinghamshire Roswell videos, and there's several of those now. The most recent one is the lecture, I think it's the lecture I did for SUFON, Swansea UFO Network, where I asked the question, if it's possible to cover up UFO crash retrievals in a remote area like Roswell, or some other really, really dry, dusty little spot in the middle of nowhere, I suppose it's reasonably easy, because you just brief in the recovery team and then that's it. But of course, people say, well, why don't UFOs crash in more built-up areas? Why don't they always come down in like the Devil's Armpit, Nevada, or somewhere like that? Why is it never in the middle of Hyde Park in London, or in the middle of Times Square in New York City? Why does that never happen? Well, there's several reasons for this. Firstly, the Earth, if you look at it on a map, you look at a population density chart of the Earth, you'll see that even in this day and age, where there's supposed to be 7 billion of us, or thereabouts, maybe it's probably less than that actually, but the United Nations always insist that population figures are always interpreted as liberally as possible, and that's a story for another time. But you can quite clearly see that humans, although there's a lot of us around, we are concentrated into very small areas, really. Basically, parts of Europe, the plains of China and India, and a couple of spots in the United States, and basically you have little red spots which are cities. Most people live in that form, unless apart from places like India and China, where there's large areas of dense population. Apart from that, I mean, over half the Earth's land surface is almost uninhabited. And of course the land surface only accounts for about 30% of the entire Earth's surface. The other 70% is sea. So that's one of the reasons you don't get many crash retrievals in large populated areas. But the second answer is they do happen in largely populated areas. the Nottinghamshire Roswell is a prime example. And as I raised the point there, I raised the point in my lecture, what makes you so sure that just because there's lots of witnesses to a UFO landing or crashing, that it wouldn't be possible to cover it up? If you've got to realise that we're dealing with a truth embargo that employs some of the best psychologists the world has ever known, employing the most devastating weapon the world has ever known. That is a knowledge of how the human mind works and how to manipulate it. Supposing a UFO landed right at Carfax, just underneath the Carfax Tower in Oxford, right? And thousands of shoppers saw it land. Aliens got out, stuff like that. They went home and told, then of course the army move in, they seal off the area. This happened in the TV series, like General Harding immediately takes control, he gets the whole area sealed off. He says, get everyone out of these nearby buildings, I don't want anyone to see this. And I'm sure many people watching, I hope this point is not lost on the viewers of that episode. Because of course, Harding, I've not got Zoom on, have I? No, I haven't. I'm a bit worried about that. There's of course you could say, well, it's too late now, it's come down in the middle of the city. But let's say, look, okay, say a flying saucer crashed or landed outside Carfax Tower. Then everyone went home and they told, hey guys, just what you never guess, an alien spaceship's landed in the middle of Oxford. You never guess, but it has. And then they'll say, and then you'd switch on the news and you see a story about how a bouncy castle had come loose, shaped like a flying saucer. It had been in the Lord Mayor's mansion, and the Lord Mayor's children were having a birthday party, and the bouncy castle had blown loose in the wind and landed in the middle of Carfax Tower. And there was a couple of people, the children's entertainers, they ran out to grab it, and they happened to be dressed like aliens. How many people who witnessed it that day would accept that cover story, even though it had gone completely contrary to everything their senses had told them at the time? I think the majority, if not all. Anyway, they arrest. What happens is Duncan Booker gets arrested in the series. This the guy who I told you about in part 1, who this witness to Roswell, who'd been threatened by Harding and his men back in '47, and he's interrogated and makes a confession. And it's weird because he kind of like makes... It's a weird thing because he makes several different confessions, and it's clear that this is where the plot twists, the double bluffs come in. Because he confesses and he says that he wants to blackmail Harding. He's basically saying he basically wants revenge. He wants revenge on Harding for threatening him and breaking up his marriage. He says he staged the whole thing to get the truth out. So all these fake UFO stories have been done by Booker to get the truth out. But then he says, I still have a piece of the saucer. I have a piece of the saucer, and I've got it somewhere, and I'm going to tell everyone, unless you go on TV and say, oh, you can tell the truth about the Roswell incident. Now, that's kind of, I mean, that's kind of a dilemma. It's putting Harding in a position where he doesn't have much to lose, because it's kind of a choice between a rock and a hard place, isn't it? So, but that's not the full story. He wants to blackmail Harding into disclosure, but then if Harding refuses, then he has another thing that could create disclosure, to get the truth out. And Hynek is actually in on this interrogation. What he says then is very interesting. He says, the public will want to know what happened. Why don't we just head him off at the pass by coming clean now about everything that happened at Roswell, so that we get our narrative in there first. So again, it's still a bit uncertain about what's going on here with Harding and Quinn and like the two generals. Sorry, with Harding and Quinn and Valentine. That's the other guy that headed Project Blue Book. And well, I think Harding's meant to be... Valentine is meant to be... What's his equivalent in real life? I think he's chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Harding is head of Blue Book. And And of course, what's going on with Quinn? Quinn, of course, is the assistant to Hynek. Hynek is like the chief scientific investigator, and Quinn is like his sidekick. But as I said in the first episode, indeed this came up at the end of series 1. Quinn and Hynek are like playing a double. They're playing their own game against the US Air Force. We think, or maybe it's like a twist in which Quinn is still manipulating Hynek for the US Air Force, pretending to go along with Hynek's plan. It's difficult to know. I mean, this hasn't really been revealed at this point. It's just, there's still many mysteries in that sense. Anyway, then, if you remember from the previous one, if you remember from the previous video I made, Booker shot an alien. He shot an alien. He was no, not Booker. It was another guy. Oh, it was the other. It was the guy in the hospital bed. He shot the alien. This was like on the night of July 47. He sees this alien, shoots it, and buries it. Booker knows where the alien's buried. Sorry, Booker doesn't know about. That's another part of the story. But Hynek and Quinn go and dig up the grave, and they bring out these alien skeletons. Presumably this alien's broken down very swiftly in the desert heat during 6 years, and there's nothing left but bones. But in the meantime, Harding then decides he needs to know where this piece of the flying saucer that Booker has is, and so he does something which is kind of a flash forward to the modern world, which I don't know if it actually happened in the early 50s when this is set, but of course it's notorious. It's a notorious part of modern life. He decides to waterboard Booker. He and a couple of military policemen come in. They put a cloth over his face and they pour water on it. Waterboarding is a torture method commonly used by the US military and intelligence. It's pretty horrible. It doesn't do permanent damage to the body, but it's extremely unpleasant. And I imagine if it went on for long enough, you could kill someone that way. It's a form of slow drowning. You put a piece of fabric over someone's face. You wet the fabric, which makes it doesn't completely shut off the person's breathing, but it makes breathing far more difficult. If you do that for long enough, they're going to suffocate, because they won't be able to breathe properly, even if they don't completely stop breathing. And then Booker says, but then Booker confesses, but then he says, I'll confess everything, but I want money. I want you to write me a check. And Harding says, why should I do that? You know, and he says, well, you wrote everyone checks, didn't you? And of course he's referring to this, to the real cover-up of Roswell, involving Mac Brazel, and his equivalent is this Connors guy, who's the equivalent of Mac Brazel in real life. So that's where it's left there at that point after the interrogation. But there's another twist to the story, which I'll come to in a minute. But then anyway, Quinn and this is the really funny bit. Quinn and Hynek take the alien bones from the grave to Glenn Dennis. I mean, everyone has a different name from reality in this particular series. They take it to a guy who's the local mortician at Roswell, who is of course the equivalent of Glenn Dennis in real life, who was the real life mortician. The guy who's phoned up by the Air Force and said, do you have 5 child-sized coffins? And so this story does come out. But then, and then of course, if you're familiar with the Roswell story, Glenn Dennis then goes to the base to see what's going on, because this is an unusual request. And he sees a hive of activity, and this woman he's dating, a nurse from the base, comes out and warns him to get the hell out of there. Then he's escorted roughly off the site by 2 security guards, and then later on the nurse tells him what she saw, and then she vanishes. Now in this case, Dennis actually sees the alien autopsy through an open door. And it is indeed an alien autopsy. It's interesting that Dennis actually says at one point, or the Dennis character, the Glenn Dennis character, says at one point to Hynek and Quinn, "I don't like the US Air Force." And Hynek replies, "We don't work for the US Air Force, we work for the people." See, they're like playing... This is a part of the story, we don't know exactly what's going on, because in a sense that at least Hynek is acting as double agent. We don't know whether Quinn is. Quinn might be a triple agent, because ostensibly these two guys are still part of Project Blue Book, and they're doing their on the surface duties, but behind the scenes they agreed that in episode 10 of series 1 that they would together secretly do a different thing. They would work to try and get the truth out about UFOs while not revealing this to their superiors, that is Harding and Valentine. That they would kind of they were actually playing a game themselves with their employers. Excuse me a moment. Back in a sec. Won't be a sec. I just forgot my dragon juice. Oh, here it is. Now, but then at the same time, I mean, I wondered this even in episode 10. I think Hynek is sincere, indeed Mimi, his wife, seems to be in on it now. She's playing an active role in this. We saw this in episode 1. Not in the, she only appears at the end of this one. But sorry, my lips. If there's some my lips, the dry lips I had in my last video, they're gone now in the Rawcon video. But it's like still a bit sore. Anyway, but at the same time, I do wonder if Quinn is actually secretly trying to undermine Hynek, and he's still basically part of the truth embargo. It's not revealed. But anyway, they go back, and after that they go back to the base, and Harding is like congratulating him. He's slapping himself on the back because he says that Booker's going to make a full confession on TV. Oh yeah, let's. It's great. It's all going to be finished. This whole sorry incident, this Roswell Incident Part II from 1952, 6 years later, it'll soon be done and dusted because he can confess to being the hoaxer, and then that's the end of it. We paid him off. We give him a check for $15,000. Anyway, what's interesting is there's a very interesting piece of dialogue because they get drunk, the three of them. They all knock back the scotch, and they start having an argument. I mean, Harding shows them his picture of Enola Gay, the plane that dropped the bomb on Hiroshima at the end of World War II, where they used a nuclear bomb on the Japanese city. And then they have this debate. It's an old debate about whether it was the right thing to do. Hynek says it was a bad thing because they killed all these innocent Japanese people. Harding says no, we had to end the war. More would have died if we hadn't done that. I mean, this is I actually replay. This is a debate that actually I reproduce between two of the characters in Roswell Rising. In the end, Hynek is drunk and he attacks Harding, calling him a coward and things like this. Now Harding says something interesting. He says, it's a tough thing, you know, being one of these men who has to draw the line between what is unthinkable and what is necessary. In other words, to make these difficult decisions, to do awful things in a situation of a dilemma when the alternative could be even worse. Now, and he's very thoughtful while he's saying this, and I think I certainly got the impression, and I think hopefully other viewers will get the impression, that he's not really talking about Hiroshima. He's actually talking about the truth embargo, of which he's a part, because he was the General Ramey character in Roswell. But anyway, he gets incredibly angry with Hynek for calling him a coward and tells Quinn he's got to sack him and things like this. But then Hynek Quinn goes out to confront Hynek and tell him, you know, basically that he's completely messed up with Harding, being rude to Harding that way. And he suddenly realised that Hynek was only pretending to be drunk. And because he basically wanted to be in a situation where he'd be allowed off for a while. So then they go and see the nurse. And it turns out the nurse, whose name is Judy, is Duncan Booker's ex-wife. Now this is the bit which Colin Woolford will love. He's probably seen this already. But she's got a little reel of film which she managed to get hold of. But this reel of film for when she was on the base as a nurse. And she plays it, and guess what it is? Yes, it's the Alien Autopsy film. Can you believe it? It's the Alien Autopsy film, a real one. Or is it? And it's funny. It's weird how these debates in the TV show then are translated into the real world, because there's a lot of Hynek and Quinn then clash over what they're going to do about this thing. It ends up with Quinn actually punching Hynek in the face again, because it happened in series 1. But Hynek goes to takes the film to Harding and tries to hand it over to him. Harding is getting ready to go on TV and doesn't take the film off him for whatever reason. I can't remember exactly why that was, but he hands it back to Quinn. Quinn goes back to the house with the nurses and finds out that Hynek has let her go. Basically, they've been detaining this woman. He's let her go. So they then rush to the TV studio where Booker, that's what happens. Booker is about to go on. How does the film? How does the film get into their hands? Oh yeah. She goes. They let her go. She takes the film to the TV studio where Harding and Booker are about to go on the air. And then Frank Joyce comes back into it, or the equivalent of Frank Joyce. Frank Joyce, the radio show host who covered the story for the Roswell local radio in 1947. His equivalent comes back into it because he's bitter as well, and he wants to get his own back on the US Air Force. So so basically they've got this plan. The plan is, because what happens is Booker's not really confessing. What Booker is going to do is, once the TV goes live, Harding thinks he's going to say, oh yeah, I hoaxed it all, and that's the end of it. Instead, when the cameras go on, Booker says, I'm here to tell you that General Harding tried to bribe me, here's the check, well, that's not really happened. And he says, roll it, Frank. And then Frank Joyce starts the camera running, and then this alien autopsy video is broadcast onto the screen, onto the studio wall behind them, and Harding is having kittens here. Switch that camera off, switch the camera off, what the hell? And he's going nuts. That's classified material, stuff like that. Now there's this dilemma. I mean, Hynek is in dilemma. Quinn is not really, because when they're heading for the studio in the car to try and catch the nurse before it all goes live, and there's this massive nationwide broadcast showing the alien autopsy, which essentially will end the truth embargo and give us disclosure. Quinn and Hynek are having this discussion, and Quinn says, maybe the world isn't ready to hear about that aliens exist. And then this is the kind of, I don't know what role he's playing here. Is this his himself, or is this the role he's meant to be playing? Because I think he's lying to Hynek as well. I'm not sure exactly how, as I've explained. But he's saying something which I'm sure a lot of people within the truth embargo say, which is, they're not saying we need to cover up aliens because we don't want the rabble to have free energy. We don't want them to know they're not alone in the universe, because then we'd lose control of them. I'm sure at the higher levels of the Illuminati that is what they're saying, But I think there's a lot of people lower down who are collaborating with this, the generals, CIA directors, people like that, who go along with it for that reason. They don't want to hurt people. They don't want to control and dominate the world and create the New World Order. They just say, well, we can't allow people to see this because people can't take it. There'll be public panic. Indeed, this is what Winston Churchill said as long ago as 1954, when he created his Flying Saucer Working Party to investigate the Foo Fighter sightings. Well, that was actually early. It started in 1944 with the Foo Fighters, 10 years earlier, but in 1954 he wrote a report with the Flying Saucer Working Party saying that he was concerned about public panic, which is incredible when you consider what the British public had gone through during World War II with enormous stoicism. The Blitz, rationing, being sent off to fight and die in foreign fields, losing family members. It's very revealing actually that the powers that shouldn't be have this attitude towards the peasantry. It shows a level of contempt actually they feel for us, that anything difficult or troublesome or even something that involves an awful lot of societal change that comes along will cause panic, because these people are just, because the people, the rabble, the ordinary man and woman in the street is basically just a feeble individual that needs to be told what to think and told what to do and told what to say. I mean, we saw this with Brexit, didn't we? It wasn't just confined to the Twitterati. I mean, some very senior figures in journalism and politics were saying things like, well, you know, we let a load of white, working class, uneducated men decide the future of the country, and that shouldn't be allowed. They're quite open about it, and I've covered that on many videos. So what Quinn said then, maybe the world isn't ready to hear that aliens exist. What he means is, maybe common people who are inferior to me are not ready to hear that aliens exist. It's very, very demeaning, isn't it? Anyway, the TV show goes live. 5, 4, 3, and Booker does his stuff, as I said, and again this is where the double bluff comes in, and there's a triple bluff. It's incredible. And Harding goes nuts because he sees this highly classified UFO film being revealed to the world in front of on live TV, and he realises the whole thing's been blown. But then Hynek, of all people, Hynek comes forward and he says, "Don't worry, I disconnected the aerial. This hasn't gone live. It's just been recorded onto videotape." Now this is very interesting because there's a very good TV miniseries or TV drama or TV movie made by the BBC, I believe, of all people, called The Vision, and it stars Dirk Bogarde, and you can get it on DVD. You can get it now on DVD. Please do watch it because it's really good. It was made in the late 80s, and it's very, very prescient of the modern world. It's about how a global TV station using satellites plans to take over the world by controlling people's minds. Dirk Bogarde's character, it's one of his last roles, knows about it, and in the middle of a live broadcast he stands up and tries to get the word out to people by telling the viewer what's happening. And as soon as he finished, he realises that he wasn't going live at all and they were just recording it. And of course he's led away by security, put under arrest, and they just delete the tape. They delete the videotape. Interesting. I wonder if the creators of Project Blue Book saw The Vision. I don't know. I don't know. They might have done. But then it all goes nuts then, because it turns out that Duncan and Joyce then confess. It all turns out, well, Hynek says there's something odd about that alien autopsy film, isn't there? Have you noticed the ceiling lights and the ceiling tiles are exactly the same as what you see in the studio? Yep, he said Frank Joyce, or the equivalent of Frank Joyce and the equivalent of Duncan Booker. Or not the equivalent, Duncan Booker is a purely fictional character. These two guys faked the alien autopsy here in this room. And now that doesn't, I mean, this leads to questions like, well, what about the bones they found? Were those real? Because Glenn Dennis said those were real bones and they were not human. Was it just was it just the part of the dummy? I don't know. How do they get the dummy together? How do they do the special effects and things like that? And then this is where Colin Woolford is going to go nuts, because this is exactly the discussion that's being had about the Alien Autopsy film right now, isn't it? The real Alien Autopsy film, or the fake real one in the real world. Whichever you decide. I mean, I've done entire videos on this, haven't I? I've interviewed Colin. And so it's like Hynek has saved the day. He's saved the day from having the world see a fake Alien Autopsy film, and Harding... What's interesting is Harding's reaction to it. Harding doesn't realise it's fake at first, and his reaction to it is very real, which indicates that he does, in a sense, he's then been bluffed into blowing his cover, because he reacts as if it's a real Alien Autopsy film, and that's the interesting bit, isn't it? So that's one untied loose end in this episode, plus the bones, of course, the alien bones. So I've got a feeling we're going to hear more about this. But then, what's interesting is then Booker just completely blows his top, and Frank Joyce, they say, yeah, we faked it, they said, or some words to this effect, but we wanted to get the word out. We wanted to show people, we know that if people saw this, it would get them thinking, it would get them looking at stuff. It would get them looking, it would get them out asking the right questions about aliens and things like that. So he's basically saying that putting this fake video on live TV, this fake Alien Autopsy film on live TV, would eventually lead to the real truth coming out. And then, funny enough, Quinn says something like that to Hynek. He says, you know, why didn't you just let them broadcast it? You know that if millions of people across the country had seen that, eventually, sooner or later, they'd be looking in the right direction. And Hynek says, you can't expose the truth with lies. And this again goes to... This again goes on to this issue about there's several occasions people have said this. They said, maybe if you just put something fake out there, it'll be we know it'll be fake, but it'll get people's attention turned towards it. There's some people who go along with the whole thermite thing to do with 9/11. They know it's not true, but they just want people to question the official story. They know it's not true. I mean, they say to me that they think Dr. Judy Wood is correct, but Dr. Judy Wood's ideas are so crazy no one will believe them, so let's just go with the thermite story, and it'll stop people believing in the official story. So the end result, the net effect of this double lie is good. It'll lead towards the truth. I personally don't think that's a good idea. I really don't. I think it doesn't do good in the long run. Because... Well, to give you an example, supposing the TV show had gone live in the series, millions of people across America would see an alien autopsy, and they go, oh my God, it's an alien autopsy. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, and then some bright spark skeptic, you know, Donald Menzel, Philip Klass, or one of these other characters, comes forward and said, oh no, it's fake. Dr. Hynek said it was fake, and stuff like that. What are people going to do? They're going to go, oh my God, we've been had, on such a huge scale. And when that happens, maybe when other material comes forward that looks similar to alien autopsies, they'll go, oh, not another one. It's another fake, man. Look at that, fake as Jordan's tits. Students make them, you know. And so it is a cry wolf factor here. That's what I'm saying. When you endorse something that's fake, you discredit other things that are real. So when something similar comes forward that is real, it's discredited, because people are then desensitized to it through lies. Now, I mean, as you know, if you watch my alien autopsy videos, you will know that I suspect this might be the role that the alien autopsy plays. Not that it was produced. I don't think it was produced for that purpose, because I've spoken to Spiros Malaris. I believe him. I think he's credible. Sorry, Colin, but I do think he is. But I believe that the alien autopsy might well have been used in an opportunistic way, streamlined to success, because, well, you know what happened when the Soviet Union collapsed. You know that how many old KGB files were floating around. You know that program with Roger Moore where they actually dig one of them up. There's a very, very good documentary made, I think it's made by the Discovery Channel in the 90s, presented by Roger Moore, the guy who played James Bond. I think it's called the UFO Files of Russia or something like that. And they basically, what happened was when the Soviet Union collapsed in the late 80s, early 90s, the KGB fell apart, and there was a period of intense chaos in Russia. And basically the KGB was disbanded, and basically all the secret files that had been sitting around in the famous intelligence services offices were scattered to the wind, and they all ended up on the black market. So anyone could get hold of a top secret KGB file for the right price. Indeed, the producers of the program bought a whole load of film stock, KGB film stock. They basically had to meet some guy in a cellar bar in Moscow or St. Petersburg, hand over some money, and they were basically, something was shoved under the table, and it was these films, it was these canister of films. And of course, it's real film this time. It's not like the Alien Autopsy. There is real film. It's all testable. But by then, I mean, this came out sort of around about 96, 97. By then, the Alien Autopsy had, in a sense, done its work, which meant that the real this film, this amazing Alien Autopsy, which I think is real, from Russia, didn't get half the attention it should have. The same goes for the Alien Interview. Do you remember the guy, I think Victor Nevada talks about? I've got a bit of a cough. I hope I haven't got coronavirus. I'll have to do a live stream about coronavirus at some point. By the way, here's a joke. If you get hospitalised with coronavirus, you know what diet they put you on? Ryvita and dairy leaf slices. Do you know why? It's the only thing they can shove under the door. Anyway, like, that's what I mean by... It's very interesting, I think, that Project Blue Book brings up this concept. Firstly, of the Alien Autopsy film. It refers to the Alien Autopsy film. Then the question over whether it is... over what role it plays. Then it's fake. There's this double bluff. There's this triple bluff by Booker. And the viewer, I think, is left at the end. I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only viewer who has spotted it, that at the end you still wonder if, even when Booker says it's fake and we made it, and Frank Joyce and Booker say, well, we made it, it's out, we faked it, is that confession correct? Or maybe there's a quadruple bluff going on here, and maybe the Alien Autopsy is real. The Alien Autopsy in the film, in the series. Because in the final scene, you see Valentine and Hardings sitting down and cracking another bottle of scotch, and they're watching the autopsy film, and then they say, it's awful what that Mengele did with these kids, isn't it? And you suddenly realise, and Harding nods, and you suddenly realise that they're talking about the Roswell incident from 1947, and they're talking about it as the thing that Annie Jacobsen talks about. If you've seen her interview on Joe Rogan, for example, or many of the other things, or read her book, she said that the Roswell incident was real, but it wasn't aliens. It was something the Germans created using Joseph Mengele, their genetic... Joseph Mengele was a horrible person. He was the genetic experimenter in the Nazi concentration camps. And they made enormous progress because they had an infinite number of human subjects they could work with, and they could treat them like rats. I mean, it didn't matter if they died. I mean, they could, they could just treat them like rats. And so they made enormous progress because they didn't have those ethical constraints. And the irony was that Mengele put them on a rocket, these kids on a rocket, which he mutilated using various pieces of surgery. These then landed in Roswell. That was what was picked up, and that was the real story of the Roswell incident. And now they're bringing it into Project Blue Book. So again, are they saying that it's real, but it's not? It's aliens. So that would explain the bones, wouldn't it? It would explain the bones, but the aliens aren't children. They're not children. You get very close-up looks at the alien body and the alien bones, and you can see quite clearly they're aliens. In fact, Hynek says to Quinn, "Look, you know they're real. You know they exist." And of course in many of the other episodes we're left in no doubt that we are talking real aliens here. And then Valentine says something incredible. He says, it's a nice film. I mean, I think they are admitting it's fake. They did it well. I mean, I don't think they're saying this alien autopsy film is real, but they're saying, I think Joyce and Booker did a good job here. They got everything right. It doesn't explain where they got the special effects stuff from. I'm sure Colin will love that bit. And then Valentine says, maybe we'll release it in 10 years or so. Meaning they're going to use it for disinformation in exactly the way that I just suggested. In which case it wasn't 10 years, it was actually 50 years. But isn't that interesting? And then there's this little epilogue scene where Hynek goes home and he sees Mimi asleep on the couch and he kisses her and he loves her and things like that. Quinn goes to and finds Suzie Miller, whatever her real name is, Suzie Millerovsky or Millerova, standing wearing like fishnets in his hotel room. Now, Suzie hasn't played much of a role in this so far in this series. As I've said, you know, she's one of the most interesting characters, and her performance is one of the best things about it, and the way she's been portrayed, because as I said in the previous series, you know something's dodgy about her. I mean, she's this beautiful lady. I mean, Quinn's like gawping at her wearing these fishnets and like a bra and panties, and I understand that. I mean, she's hot as chestnuts, but from the moment she first appears in the first episode of the first series, and she basically corrupts Mimi Hynek, you know there's something dodgy about her. There's something sinister and dark about her that makes me go, oh, what's up with her? She's trouble. And indeed, you find out that she's Russian. It's now a well-known fact that she's Russian. She's actually a Russian spy, and Quinn doesn't know that. So I'm expecting in the next few episodes she'll be playing more of a role. Now she's moved on from Mimi Hynek to Captain Quinn. So she's now using him. Anyway, it's nice to. I want to thank the person who basically sent me the ability to watch this episode. Many thanks to that person. As I said, I intend to buy the DVD, so don't get all het up about it. I can't wait for that though. It's going to be months before we see it in Britain, so it'll be on the History Channel over here eventually, but I can't wait that long. I love the series too much. So, well, on to episode 3. What's that going to bring us? So far, this series it's turning out to be as good as the first one, if not better. I mean, just 2 episodes in, and it's absolutely rollicking, and it's packed with all kinds of issues. And I mean, I do wonder, like, because it's packed with serious exopolitical concepts, such as the debate over the alien autopsy film. You know, the idea of secret plans involving double bluffs and disinformation. The idea that Roswell Incident might be one thing, then might be another, and you find out that the alternative story is also fake. And these are really serious subjects. I mean, the people who made this have really, really done their homework. They really have. And they're obviously knocking around with some real serious people who are involved in this subject. I mean, like Dave Altman, you know him because he often appears in chat during live streams and he comments and things like that. I mean, they've really, I think the people who really made a part. Indeed, I heard an interview with the producer and director. It was on Somewhere in the Skies with Ryan Sprague, I think. And it's pretty clear they want to make something that is truly ufological and exopolitical. And so far, they bloody well succeeded. Can't wait for episode 3. Well, thank you for watching HPANWO TV. Hospital Porters, Pride and Dignity. Stop the New World Order. Oh, and one more thing. That time when the TV station was about to go live and didn't. Has that ever happened in real life? Has there been a time when disclosure has before been that far away, and the truth embargo has been that far away from failure. I'll leave you to think about that.